what I think is so tricky in all this is, so we can talk about this kind of in a very objective way. We're talking about reopening an office and bringing people in, but it's not an objective conversation, right? It's a very emotional conversation. And I shared this on an earlier show. It hit me not too long ago that everyone kind of has their own COVID religion, right? They've got their own religious view on how they should be operating, and everyone else should be operating, and it kind of goes on the spectrum. From one end, it's terrified, it's a plague, it's going to kill everybody, including me. Right. And the other side is it's a conspiracy, and this is not even a real thing. And then everything in between.
Right.
And so I imagine that even people listening to this probably have their view, an opinion on whether you're moving too fast or too slow, right? And that's fine. They can have their opinion, right? We're just trying to educate. But what were some things that you experienced when you started to open? What were some feedback that people gave you, and how did you start to get people comfortable with this idea?
You're exactly right. And as a leader, one of the challenges among many over the last few months has been that any decision, anything on this issue is so polarizing. And as leaders, we're used to having to make the hard decisions, right? And and people aren't happy with some decisions we make, and used to that. But man, the last few months, it's felt like every decision has been like that, and it's a vocal group that disagrees one way or the other. I mean, we had people that were kind of on one end of that spectrum when we announced even that we were allowing people to come back voluntarily. Just how can you do this? This is irresponsible. This is that sort of thing. When we announced that we were requiring masks on campus, it was a similar response. This is unconstitutional. You're violating my civil rights, that sort of thing. And you're like, oh my gosh, we can't win. And so, I think our strategy has been on this is that, first of all, we want to be very, very transparent about our motives, about the information that we're consuming that is driving these decisions, and try to put that out there, and then allow people the time to kind of process this on their schedule, right? Kind of based on where they are.
Yeah.
And so every announcement that we've done has been like a month in advance, right? This is coming in a month. Here's why. This is why we think it's important. This is why we think is the right decision right now. And this is what's happening. And I will say, for people who are really on that end of the spectrum that are truly terrified, try to have a lot of compassion and grace to let them kind of deal with that and how we approach it. But it's really, we talk about this in general in communication. It's not about how you communicate, it's about how the other person hears, and really viewing everything we do through that filter of going, we got people all over the spectrum, and we got to allow all of them to process it the way that they're going to.
So I love a couple things in that I think are great takeaways. One, you're giving people time.
Yeah.
This isn't quite the same analogy, but I often find in some of the successful change management processes, they go through a migration period before they mandate.
Right.
You're not mandating people come back, but you're going through a migration period to get people comfortable before you say, and then this is when this new thing's going to go into place. But you're also giving transparency into your decision making,
right,
and your thinking. So you're saying, here's why we made the decision. Here's why it matters. Here's how we're thinking through this.
Yeah.
So people can see that, because you and I were talking before we started the show. What makes this so challenging for leaders is there's incomplete data. I mean, there is no one's working with a full set of cards.
That's right.
Right? We got what we got, and we have to use our gut instinct and assumptions, our culture, other ways to kind of decide how we want to navigate through this and make a decision.
Yeah.
And then once the decision's made, we're going to have people not like it.
That's right. Yeah. And it's not only incomplete data, but depending on where you get your data, it is completely contradictory.
Yeah. Yeah.
let me tell you, the last few months, if you watched Fox News and you watched CNN, we're living in completely different worlds.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the challenges as well. Yeah. Again, you got to realize your audience, they are more than likely getting their data from that kind of a resource, right? Yeah. And maybe it's not TV, it's social media, which is actually, algorithmically moving them to one extreme or the other, right? And so that was, again, when we announced we were reopening it all, I did a big company-wide webcast kind of thing and just said, I know you've seen all this data. I want to show you the data I look at.